Hey y'all, I'm Cal. Let's get messy. Hey y'all, welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome. Thank you for listening. So I wrote an article over the weekend that's on Medium and Substack, and I'll link it below. But I really wanted to dig a little deeper and talk about where it came from, why it's been on my mind, and that's the whole why me question. Been kind of stuck in this loop for the past couple of months, and it's unhealthy, and I know it, and I've been there before, and I've dug myself out of it, and it's time for me to do that again. So the why me loop, what is it? Well, poor pitiful me, right? Like, why does this happen to me? Why doesn't anything work out for me? Why do I get bullied about this? Why did this happen to me and not work out the way that I'd planned? All the questions that we ask ourselves, sometimes out loud, sometimes just inside our head at 3 o'clock in the morning when we're going back over everything in our heads that's ever happened to us, that's ever gone wrong, that we've ever said wrong, that we've ever done wrong, all the bad stuff. And it's universal, You've got betrayal, a diagnosis, bullying, job loss. It happens almost immediately. It's almost like an instinct. Why me? Why did this happen to me? Why me? I tried so hard, or why not them? And I feel like all of us have experienced this, and if you've never admitted it out loud to yourself or even inside your head, chances are you're probably lying to yourself, and you need to do a little more digging on some emotional intelligence and self-awareness. So I encourage you to do that. And victimhood is real. We all experience it. We've all been the victim of something. And I really feel like we all at one point in our life have asked ourselves, why me? And it's legitimate. It's an absolutely legitimate human question. The problem is when it turns into a trap and it begins to affect your behavior towards others, your behavior towards yourself. That's where the problem lies, is when we keep asking, why me? And stop asking other questions that are more beneficial, that propel us towards growth rather than sitting here in our one-person pity party. Recognizing it is necessary, especially if you've experienced gaslighting or being ignored or get that stay positive advice, just be strong, stay positive, everything will work out. So sit with the pain, right? Acknowledge it, work through it in a healthy way. That's human. But when we stop looking for growth and start living in this spiral of sympathy and pity, when the why me stops being a question of a search for meaning and more of our script, that's when we get in trouble. We start narrating our lives through what happened to us versus what we're capable of. So think about it. Victimhood becomes an identity when we use it to explain everything, why we isolate, why we sabotage, why we lash out at those around us, even those that we love, why we don't even try. When it becomes an excuse to not even try, that's when there's a problem. We're not doing it because we're weak. We're doing it because it's familiar. And as regular, normal human beings, we all love familiarity. Choosing something new, asking different questions. Sometimes it feels impossible. So let's talk about the science behind this, right? The neuroscience of rumination. Okay. When we ask why me over and over again, we're strengthening neural pathways in what's called the default mode network, right? So that's the part of your brain that's active when you're not focused on the outside world or anything else around you. And researchers have found that people who ruminate, I ruminate a lot, show increased activity in this network, particularly in the medial prefrontal cortex and posterior cingulate cortex is what it's called. So basically, the more you ask why me, the better your brain gets at asking why me in terms that you and I can understand. So it's like building a road straight to empathy, right? With no detours. You ask it over and over again, it becomes easier to ask over and over again till eventually that's all you're asking. You're not asking the growth questions. So I'll read you some research that I found. Research on post-traumatic growth shows that about 50 to 60% of trauma survivors actually experience positive psychological changes. But those are the ones asking different questions. Instead of why me, they're asking what now? Or what can I learn? So we've got studies by researchers like Richard Tedeschi, Lawrence Calhoun. They found that trauma survivors who experienced growth showed 5 specific types of positive change. Here they are. 1, greater appreciation of life. 2, closer relationships. 3, new possibilities in life. 4, personal strength. And 5, spiritual development. But none of that happens when we're sitting here stuck in this why me loop. The loop that I have been in recently and have finally put a stop to. It's been nothing external. And the thing is, it's been nothing specific that I can pinpoint and say that I was trying to think, why me? But it's always been back here in the back of my brain. And it explains why we get stuck. When we repeatedly tell ourselves, it's just like with anything else, when we repeatedly tell ourselves that we're the victim, that becomes our identity. We're literally forming our life story around our why me victimhood. And I don't know about you, but that's not the person that I want to be. So what's the difference between helpful processing and harmful rumination? So helpful processing helps us move forward to grow into something different, something better, something that we want to be, something that we want to wake up to. Rumination keeps us stuck right here, right now, in this misery, and in yesterday's misery, and the day before's misery, and the day before that's misery. What we're trying to escape from, I would hope. But when we keep asking the same question over and over and over again, why me, why me, we're never going to get out of that. We're never going to escape it. And so the research has shown that asking different questions literally rewires your brain. Every time you stop asking, why me, and you start asking, what now, you're weakening those rumination habits, right? And you're strengthening new ones. And what they've discovered through their research, and I'll link this all below, 5 days. In as little as 5 days, your brain can begin to rewire itself. And so an outside of me example that I'll share with you, and this goes back to my prior podcast about bullying. When somebody gets stuck in that why me cycle, oftentimes they turn it on everybody else around them. So my bully at my last job, I could tell. They never used the words why me, but the pattern of their behavior and the words they did use makes it clearly evident that they are stuck in a why me loop. So everything was weaponized. Everything was everyone else's fault. Their predecessor didn't train them well enough or didn't spend enough time with them. My coworker that they fired was stupid and caused all the problems. Every issue that would pop up, it was because somebody else was stupid. Somebody else caused it. Somebody else didn't know what they were doing. Somebody else couldn't communicate. It was never this person who, fun fact, I had access to everything and can go back and see their name all over everything that they were complaining about. Meanwhile, they were blaming everybody else. And that comes from a why me victimhood mentality. And it was flipped and turned into bullying, right? And so that's why I have to empathize with them, because I see it. I understand it. I've been there myself. I didn't express it in the same way, but I've had those same feelings. So how could I not empathize with somebody that I know just by looking at their behavior, is probably experiencing some form of that. And there's science behind that. More research shows that psychologists call the victim-aggressor cycle. A study in the Journal of Applied Psychology found that people who perceive themselves as chronic victims are more likely to engage in workplace aggression. They're stuck in what's called hostile attribution bias. So they see threats everywhere. And I'm literally describing this person that the higher ups, cheered on as a great leader, done a great job. They interpret everything as an attack. And then they respond with aggression to protect themselves. And that's all this person was doing. Doesn't excuse this person. I don't condone it. I'm suffering the consequences of it, but I understand it. So what does staying stuck in this why me cost us? It creates distance. It creates distance between you and joy, you and accountability, me and accountability, you and me and a life that we desperately want, but for some reason choose to ask why me that makes us think we don't deserve it. It causes rifts in relationships, which is something I've been experiencing personally a little bit lately. Just because I don't have the words to communicate these why me feelings that I need to stop asking, right? And so the longer we stay there, the more we start to resent the people who didn't. And I'm talking to myself now. We side-eye people who grow. We assume they're faking it. We tell ourselves they didn't suffer as much, that they're not suffering silently, or they're just lucky, but the truth is, maybe they asked different questions, right? Maybe instead of why me, it was why not me, which is when I'm getting out of these patterns, my go-to question, why not me? What the hell makes me think I'm so special that this wouldn't happen to me? Well, I don't think I'm that special, so maybe I need to ask, what now? What I can learn from it. What do I need instead of what do I think I deserve? What part of me didn't believe I had a choice in the situation? Was it true? No, it wasn't true. And what lesson can I learn from this? What can I do differently next time to avoid a situation like this? These are the real growing questions, not the why me, poor, pitiful me. And these questions are really tough to ask. They're humbling, but they open doors. Why me keeps you trapped in this little tiny cage that you will never escape. I will never escape. What now, or what can I learn, or what can I do differently? Those are the questions that open the doors to possibilities that we can't even dream of or imagine. So yeah, this will be a short episode. You're welcome. But it's something that I felt like, for me personally, I just needed to get it off my chest. I needed to put it out there. I needed to record some sort of accountability for myself to continue on the path away from why me to what now? Because I'm never going to get anywhere as long as I stay stuck back there in that mindset. And neither will you. We don't have to pretend it didn't hurt. We don't have to pretend that we're not embarrassed or ashamed or angry. We can feel all of those feelings without getting stuck on this continuous loop of victimhood. Because every single one of us at one point in our lives is a victim. Every single one of us, whether we want to admit it or not, at one point or time is an aggressor, right? So take that into account. And it's okay to have all those feelings. It's not okay to, as I like to say, live in them, to live your life based on those feelings for any of us. So if nothing else, what I want us both to take away from this is you can be a victim without being defined by your powerless moments, right? You can leave the door cracked and look back at it occasionally to reflect and remember and see what other lessons you can pull from specific situations. But you got to keep that door cracked, not wide open, where you go in and sit down and spend some time, because that's not where we need to be spending our time. So I've got a bunch of links down in the description. A worksheet, workbook, guide kind of packet to walk through, gives you some prompts, speaks on the science behind this victimhood mentality that too many of us choose to live in. There is links to some books that I think are helpful if you're stuck right now, because we all get stuck on something, maybe not this particular issue, but we all get stuck in things. And if you're stuck in the why me loop, there's some great books that I've linked below. So I hope you'll come back. I hope you have a fantastic week. I thank you for being here. I hope you will share this. I don't have anything else to say, guys. I love you. Bye.